Hi, everyone. This is KLMeri.
And this is Soda.
It's been a while since we've done a podcast, but we are back in 2022. And today's topic is pairings within the non original series shows of Star Trek. So we're talking about The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise. We're going to talk about canon pairings that we saw in the show. We'll also be talking about fanon pairings or pairings that fans really appreciated or wish they had seen on the show or that were most popular. We have quite a list to get through today, so we will just jump in.
Yeah. Just one thing before we start is that we will not be covering the newer shows. Simply because a lot of them are only in their first few seasons and the characters are still not very fleshed out. So we're going to wait until they're done with before we start getting into them. But yeah, today we're going to talk about I think, I don't know how to define that era of Star Trek. I mean, if the original series is like classic era, what is the Next Generation to Enterprise era?
I mean, that's a great question. When I think about the original series, the thing that comes to mind is not the romantic relationships, right?
Well, I mean, on one hand, yes, but on the other hand, this was the fandom that launched the concept of shipping, as we know.
It is. But as far as when I say romantic pairings, I mean within the show itself. The canon romantic pairings, like what pairings?
Yeah, that's also true. But at the same time, when people think of the original series, they also usually think, "Oh, Kirk, he had a different woman every episode." Which is not something you can say about any of the other captains.
True, but when you talk about within his own crew,
yeah,
other than
stable pairings,
stable pairings
is series long ships.
Yeah, or even a ship like a pairing that lasted like half a season or a season. There's none of that in the original series.
Yeah, I mean, they tried to have this off again, on again thing with Rand, but then she left the show, so that kind of fell apart.
Yes, true. And to be honest, there's never a point at which they say, we're in a relationship together, which is what happens in the other shows.
That's true. Though I have to say, in most of the other shows, the captain is also not in a romantic relationship.
Yeah,
the romantic relationships are reserved for the rest of the crew, but not the captain.
Yeah.
Which I think it's interesting. Do you think they get it from the original concept of Kirk being married to the ship?
I just would not say that some of the other captains are married to their ship or
But I kind of think they are. I mean, maybe not married to the ship specifically, but kind of like workaholics to the point that they don't really have a place for a relationship in their lives, except for one. But we'll get to him.
Yes, and no. I think with Kirk, you were supposed to think one, he's married to a ship, but in a sense that he's also very ambitious career-wise, or he was supposed to be in the beginning. I don't really consider that trait carried over into the other captains. I mean, yes, totally. Some of them are workaholics. They're all about the job, but that it comes before all other relationships. I mean, you could probably make the case for a couple of them, but others, I don't know.
Well, I mean, let's start with the first captain we get, Picard.
Yeah,
I think Picard is a workaholic.
He is. No, he is for sure a workaholic. But he's also a man who had an unrequited love.
Yeah, kind of. Okay, they kind of played with it in the first season, or not 2 seasons because Crusher kind of disappeared in season 2. But
yeah,
they played with it at first, but then they kind of fizzled out, I guess, the relationship.
Mm-hmm. But it's right. But in the beginning, so we're talking about Picard Crusher, okay?
Yeah.
Um,
Picard and Crusher.
there was this. I mean, there's this point where I don't even know. It's like, what are they having some like campfire discussion? I don't remember. But anyway, he explained like she says there's always been like an attraction between us. I think anybody who comes into the next generation kind of sees that. um,
Yeah.
but he goes on to admit like he never really admitted he was in love with her because she was married to his best friend.
Yeah. Made things
It's
awkward.
like an unrequited love, or it was supposed to have been, and then, as you know, the best friend dies, and she ends up the doctor on his ship.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting dynamic because they had a kind of like Kirk and McCoy also knew each other before they came up together on the Enterprise, and then you have Picard and Crusher who also knew each other before, but they have this like very loaded relationship. She was married to his best friend. He kind of had feelings for her, but he couldn't act out because she was married to his best friend.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's interesting. There's also the factor that Crusher has a kid now.
Yes.
And Picard really really doesn't get along with him. I mean, poor.
Yeah, he's definitely not a replacement for the father that Wesley lost in any sense.
I mean,
Picards
really
are pretty
poor
awkward.
Wesley. I mean, it's very sad because Wesley kind of looks up to him,
Mm-hmm.
and Picard is so mean to him sometimes.
There was always like the potential there for Picard and Crusher. I mean, I think the other scene that comes to mind, and when it was like not really Picard, but he was going like inviting her to dinner and whining and dining her, and she like got all dressed up, put on her makeup, and seemed kind of excited for that. But it turns out it wasn't actually Picard; it was like his imposter. So
I'm actually thinking about the remake of The Naked Now, The Naked Time. They also had a very. I think that's the closest they ever got to have anything.
I think I mean, at some point she realized it wasn't him. He wasn't quite acting like Picard, and I kind of like that, tried to force himself on her or something like that. Anyway, I think Picard, Crusher, I can see why there are fans of the pairing because, like I said, you come into the show, even in the first season, it's like supposedly this underlying attraction.
Yeah.
And there's this history.
Yeah.
This history between them.
Another pairing on The Next Generation that comes ready-made with sexual tension is Troy and Riker, of course.
Yeah.
The story there is kind of different. They worked together for a while, and then Riker got a promotion, so he kind of ditched her. And they're on good terms now, but you also get the feeling that, she's still a little bit mad about that, and he's still a little bit in love with her, and they have this real day one day for like 7 seasons until they get married in the movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what to say about this is like in your face, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, it's a will they, want they. I mean, we'll talk about another pairing that Troy is involved in.
Yeah.
Riker, to be honest, it's not like Riker's got like a singular focus on Troy. I mean, he is sort of the charmer, right?
It's interesting. Neither of them has a singular focus, and in the first few seasons, you got this kind of like, the first few seasons, Gene Roddenberry was still running the show, and he had some interesting ideas about how he thinks humanity will evolve in the future. And I think one of those ideas that was kind of explored in those first few seasons, couple of seasons, is that he thinks that I think he kind of aimed for like to say monogamy is kind of old-fashioned.
Yeah.
And no one really does that anymore. So Troy and Riker have feelings for each other, but they see other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
But I think, when Rick Berman took over, it was like, no, this is way too radical for our audience. We'll just have them have like this complicated relationship where they want to be together, but it's just never right.
But that's not to say that like they aren't together. I mean, in the show. I mean, they even talk about their physical relationship at some point.
Yeah,
That's
I
an
mean,
awkward conversation to have with other people.
it's never made like explicit whether they consider themselves to be a couple or not.
I
Up
find
until
it
they get married.
confusing, if I'm being
Yeah,
honest.
it's very confusing at times.
Yeah, that was always a pairing. I was like, well, it's there. It's
Yeah,
sometimes
it's
in your
there.
face and sometimes not, and sometimes alluded to, and sometimes like you just don't know what's going on, or is this like
Yeah,
an open relationship? Like, I have no idea.
yeah,
That's how I always felt about Riker and Troy.
yeah. I always felt like the very definition of the relationship is it's complicated.
Yeah. And, given the fact that she's the counselor on the ship, and I'm like, is he talking about himself? Is he talking about his relationship?
I mean, I'm hoping she's not the only counselor on a ship of like over 1,000 people.
She's definitely his, though.
That would be weird. That would be very weird.
So let me ask you a question. I mean, it's pretty clear Troy knew Riker very well. Part of her nature being able to understand people and, help them sort through their internal battles, whatever. Do you ever get the feeling Riker knew her just as well?
I actually think I do. I think he knew her very well. I don't think he was like... No, Riker, he's a womanizer, but I think he's a womanizer in the same vein Kirk was. Like not in the way that people think Kirk was, but in the actual way Kirk was. Like he actually cared about the women he was with as humans, as people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think he did know her very well. Even when they weren't like officially together, he still treated her as a very important and close friend. And when she was with other people, he was happy for her if she was happy.
Yeah. So maybe we should move on to Troy and Worf.
Yeah, that pairing kind of came out of nowhere.
Totally out of nowhere, and then before you know it, they're taking like holodeck walks on the beach and kissing each other, and it's kind of strange because Worf is actually a little bit like, do we have to worry about Riker's feelings? It's like, should we, like, what should we do about that situation? And she's like, don't worry about it.
And she was right. Yeah, I mean, I am wondering, there's the thing where Star Trek writers have this really, really weird tendency. Like, they set up these very obvious pairings all throughout the seasons. And then at the last season, they like to just kind of stick some weird pairing that no one expected. I don't know why. That no one expected and no one wanted. They just stick it in there. They're like, you thought we'll go one way, but we went this way. And like, no one asked for it. No one asked for Worf and Deanna. I don't know why you went with it, but well, now it's there. And the funny thing is, we don't even really get... I mean, they obviously separate at some point, and we never learn why. We never learn how they got together, and we never learn how they broke up.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I remember... I don't know. I just remember the first time they were, like, on each other, and I went, what's going on?
Yeah. It came out of nowhere.
It really did. You would never have guessed, like, prior to, there was some underlying attraction in there. It's just in your face suddenly.
Yeah, and Worf doesn't really get a lot of, like, love interests, right?
No.
He has this one half Klingon, half human woman, which he has a kid with.
Yep.
Which is also a very strange storyline because, like, he doesn't even know he has a kid with her until she shows up with the kid. And then she dies. And then he spends, like, a few seasons being grumpy and alone, and then, he's with Deanna.
Yeah. Okay, so...
Oh, there is one more canon pairing. it's not fully canon because it's one-sided.
Yeah.
But it is canon in the way that it is present for several episodes, which is Deanna's mother, Luxana Troy, continuously sexually harassing Picard.
Oh gosh, yes. This is the awkward conversation I alluded to where Riker and Troy are just like, he's like, what's going on with her? And she's like, oh, betas always go through that phase where their sex drive quadruples. I was just like, poor Picard. Why does he have to deal with that?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's another one of those things that I think are left over from Gene Roddenberry's vision.
Did you just always laugh when she was like kind of all over Picard, or did at some point it make you uncomfortable?
Actually, I kind of had the opposite journey, I could say. At first, it made me uncomfortable, but I think it's at some point it moved on from her honestly harassing him to just kind of poking his ego because he's way too self-important. Someone needs to just knock him down the track. And she did it so well. She really did.
She did. I guess I would say I'm more like you. I was trying to get at, like, did you ever really feel like she was harassing him? Because I did.
Yeah, at first I did. At first it was kind of uncomfortable, but I think she mellowed out, but she still kind of like pulled it out once in a while just to like poke his ego.
Yeah. So does that wrap it up for? Well, hold on. If we're still talking about canon pairings, do we have to mention, like, we can mention this in Deep Space Nine as well, but technically, doesn't Miles and his wife get married?
Yeah.
In the Next Generation? So O'Brien and Keiko.
Keiko, yeah.
Keiko.
They do. Miles is very much, I won't even say, kind of a secondary character, but even less than that. More like a recurring character. From the Next Generation, and Keiko is even less important of a character than him. So
the only reason I bring it up is because it is a pairing or relationship that carries through to another series.
Yeah, they do get married. They have a kid on the show. Worf remembers. But yeah, we don't really see their love story. They are there, but we don't really see their love story. The really big episode for the relationship is when they get married, and it pretty much is told entirely from Data's point of view.
Yeah, it is. Actually, now that you mentioned that, Data and Jenny. Do you remember Data and Jenny?
No. Who is that?
Remember that one time he tried dating?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, she's a one-off character. There are a lot of one-off relationships.
Yeah, but it made me think because I think they did like some double date with the O'Briens.
Possibly.
Yeah.
I mean, we can also mention Geordi and his weird holographic girlfriend. Which, when he met the real person, became very, very awkward.
Yes. Or the young engineer who had a crush on Geordi.
Sonia, something?
Yeah, something like that. So. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There are, how do we put it, like, people just being people, right? Liking people, falling out with people, whatever, just stuff going on in the series. But I think we covered the main canon pairings.
Yeah, I think the Next Generation much more. In the original series, the ship felt more like a military vessel, like it was people's job. But Next Generation felt more like a flying hotel of sorts. Like people had a lot more personal lives
and interactions outside of ship's business.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now we move on to the Fanon pairings, which in almost all fandoms, Fanon pairings, the popular Fanon pairings are very different from the canon pairings. And I mean, there are some exceptions, especially in like fandoms that focus on on romance, I think. But but in Star Trek it proves very true. There are two main pairings I think are the most popular. I think traditionally the most popular pairing that I can think of is Data and Geordi.
Yes.
Both of them didn't get a stable romantic partner for the entire series. I guess they're very good friends, and you know, I'll admit, Next Generation is not my favorite series, and well, I think that as an interesting character, they're kind of like I find the relationship a little bit boring.
People tend to like to take the characters that like are third wheeling or by themselves, as you said, they don't have a stable like romantic partner or love interest, and then just kind of like sometimes they like to pair them with the other person who does it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting. I can't second say it because, well, Jordy has several like one-off romantic interests, and he's shown to have very little luck
Yeah.
in the romantic department. And I can see fans going like, maybe because he only tried it so far with women, maybe he's into men. And Data is just exploring his feelings. He had, like we said, he had an episode where he tried to have a romantic relationship, but it didn't go well because he doesn't really understand romance.
Yeah.
But a lot of people kind of interpret his strong feeling to Jordy as a sort of romance. So
Mm-hmm.
I can see the appeal. I just think they're best friends who become boyfriends. It's very wholesome and it's also very boring to me.
Yeah. If you're gonna put them together with someone, you usually put them together with their best friend.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. So the other very big ship, which I think has gained more popularity in recent years, is Picard and Q.
I'm only laughing because this is again another typical. If they're not best friends,
Yeah,
and you're not going to hook them up, then they might be enemies.
yeah.
That's another favorite.
That's definitely another favorite. And I mean, there aren't a lot of like enemies in Star Trek, so when you get one, you use it.
Exactly, and especially not ones that reoccur as often as Q. I mean,
Yeah.
Q is. There's a reason why people ship Picard and Q. It's because Q's always showing up to bother Picard, and sometimes it is specifically just to like get on his nerves.
Yeah.
It's not because he's up to shenanigans again. He's like, oh, I just love to bother Picard so much. We're like, why are you so obsessed with him?
Exactly. I think part of this is that he claims to be like obsessed with humans, but you can see that he is specifically obsessed with Picard.
Exactly.
I can see a lot of people kind of wondering why. And it is funny, the concept of this like omnipotent being being obsessed with this 50-year-old guy it is very funny. Yeah, Picard himself is like he also had a few one-off relationships during the show, but
Yeah.
it never lasts. And I think it's one of kind of those traits that I think a lot of fans latch onto. When a character doesn't really have a lot of luck with women, a lot of people interpret it as maybe you should try men.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, like, this dude's obsessed with him. Maybe at some point Q would wear him down, who knows. But I think that's just what makes the concept so funny, is because of Picard's personality.
Yeah, definitely.
Just the concept of Picard Q is inherently as funny as it is entertaining.
It is. I mean, I don't like Q personally. I don't really like him as a character. But yeah, I can't deny that the relationship is funny. The concept of it is very, very funny.
Well, I mean, Q is just not a good guy.
Yeah. I mean, he's very... I mean, a lot of people like him anyway, just because he's so chaotic and,
Yeah.
I just never got into him. But the concept of the relationship is funny.
He is that Loki type character, right? He chaos
He's a
is wherever he
trickster.
shows up.
Yeah. Kind of a trickster.
And kind of a trickster. So it's a type of character that people can like become obsessed with, in much the way that he's obsessed with Picard.
True.
Okay. Does that cover it for the Next Generation?
No, those are the two biggest ones. There are a couple more ships that I want to mention.
Oh, yeah.
We talked about Deanna's complicated relationship with Worf and Riker, and a few fans take it to the next level and decided all three of them should be a throuple. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting concept. I think it works.
Does it?
Yeah, I actually kind of think it works. I mean, Worf and Riker, well, Worf very much respects Riker. He has a lot of appreciation for him. So I can see people seeing there's something there. And they both obviously love Deanna. So why not?
Yes, in theory, if you have, like, I mean, I totally agree, like, the Riker-Troy thing, obvious. I guess we have to go in with the Worf-Troy thing, because it was kind of shoved in our faces.
Yeah.
For me personally, I always thought, like, Riker and Worf were fairly platonic. Like you said, great mutual respect for each other. I mean, to your point, that is the recipe for a throuple.
And that's an interesting point that some people may even compare the Troy, Deanna, Worf, the Troy, Riker, Worf throuple to Spock.
Yeah.
With Riker being a Kirk type, and Deanna being a McCoy type, and Worf being a Spock type.
Yep.
It's a good balance of characters.
It is, but then you just, how do you explain, just in the way that, like, Troy and Worf were suddenly no longer a thing, and he, ends up in the show Deep Space Nine, like, same thing for their throuple.
Yeah, there is no question that it's not canon, and there is no question that the relationship was very random. But, I mean, fans are going to ship what they ship.
My point is, what kind of future does it have?
Who knows? Maybe someday down the future. I mean, sadly, the relationship between Worf and Jadzia, well, we're going to talk about how it went and how it ended.
Yeah, true. True.
So maybe there's a future for it. Who knows?
So the last one?
The last one, well, it's mainly because, well, Trek isn't great. Still isn't. It wasn't great so far in that era on women representation.
Yeah.
And for the well, some people kind of, I guess, shipped Troy and Crusher, but there weren't many. I think the most popular ship was ship was Troy and Tasha Yar. Which is sad because Tasha is only there for one season and then she dies. There is an episode where Tasha kind of confesses that she was always a little bit, envious of Diana and how she dressed and how pretty she looked and something like that. So I think that's mostly where people draw their inspiration from.
Mm-hmm. And I think later on we'll see the femme / at least in Deep Space Nine, based off of friendships, right? Like actual friendships.
Yeah, I think it's very obvious that the most femme / heavy Star Trek fandom is Voyager, but
Yeah, poor Yar.
Yeah.
So brief.
So brief. I mean, it was the actress' choice, but they didn't have to kill her.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's mostly it for the Next Generation. I think the point here is in Next Generation shipping is that there weren't that many main characters, fleshed out characters that which aren't enough times for fans to hang on to.
And even like Troy Riker, which obviously goes the furthest, like they get married, right? Um, it was still very rocky. It's like, can you
Yeah.
depend on it or not as a relationship? Whereas I think we see that definitely change in the later seasons. I mean, not the later series in Star Trek or the series that come after.
Yeah. Which is kind of the complete opposite of the next series up. Deep Space Nine. Deep Space Nine had so many returning characters, so many main characters, so many complicated relationships and dynamics. There were a lot of couples that were popular, in canon and in Fanon.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah,
There were just a lot of canon pairings to
exactly.
begin with. I mean, I think
Yeah,
we named like 4 in the Next Generation, but we've got twice as many in Deep Space Nine.
yeah. I mean, we already mentioned the Brian and Keiko, which moved over from
Yeah,
um, Next Generation to Deep Space Nine, and they got a lot more, a lot more fleshing out in the series because O'Brien was actually a main character. Keiko was still a recurring character, but she was a pretty important part of O'Brien's life.
yeah. And can I just mention my like favorite moment for them? She's not even there, but it's the time that Julian and Miles like kill her bonsai trees. And then yeah, it's just like your classic. Oh no! Like the husband's done something that he knows is gonna make the wife so mad, and he's just it's like how could it's classic like married relationship stuff
Yeah. I mean,
problems.
it's interesting because a lot of fans at the time just couldn't stand Keiko. Like, you still see some of it today. Like, they really were, oh, she's such a shrew. She always nags him. She's always annoying. But it's like, I don't know. I see the series and it's not really true. Most of the time, they're pretty happy together.
Yeah. To be honest, I didn't get much of a feel for her as like a character. She's like you said, she's like in and out.
Yeah.
So, but what I did take away from it is they have was often portrayed as just like the classic married couple.
Yeah, that's true.
They had their fights and like nagging and good moments and bad moments and is
And the
normal.
surviving dog. Yeah,
It was normal. That's what I took away from
basically.
it.
Yeah. But they weren't the main pairings in the show. Yeah. I think the earliest sort of pairing was Bashir and Dax. I think was the very first one, and it's one-sided. Bashir and Jadzia Dax, they should say. This nine is a lot more to talk about.
Yeah. So Bashir and the Daxes.
Yeah,
Or
I mean,
let's start with the first one.
yeah. So Bashir and Jadzia Dax. I think Bashir was kind of situated to be the womanizer of the show. I don't think he ended up this way, but
No.
that's kind of what they aimed for with his character. And Jadzia is an interesting character because she is technically a young woman, but she is carrying a symbiont who is 300 years old and has the experience of like 7 other lifetimes.
Yes. Very, very seasoned.
Yeah, so when Bashir is coming out to her, she's like, "Listen, kid, you're way too young for me." And yeah, it's one-sided, and I think it ended on a really good note when it ended with Jadzia.
Yeah.
They had like this really sweet moment in kind of a life or death situation where he kind of admitted that when, in the first seasons when he was younger, he would have like, if he was in that time yet, if he was that age yet, in that situation, he would probably try to hit on her, on her in that time. But he kind of grew to appreciate their friendship. And that's why they remained as just best friends, and I think it's really nice.
To be honest, when it came to relationships, Bashir always kind of struck me as immature.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, so to me, I kind of equated like the way he was hitting on her and like kind of fantasizing a bit
Yeah,
about her was very much like a schoolboy with a crush.
very much. And it was even more emphasized by how like mature she was.
Exactly. So, no tears wasted there.
Yeah, I don't
That
think
didn't work.
no one was rooting for them, and I think that's why the resolution of their relationship was very satisfactional for a lot of people.
Let's talk then about what happens when Dax returns as um
I want to put it off for the end because it
okay.
is the last pairing, and it's kind of what we talked about with the trend of Trek writers.
Okay.
Yeah. So chronologically speaking, I think the next one is Kira and Odo.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is an interesting one. At first, Kira and Odo were simply friends. Odo is a changeling who didn't even know he was part of a species of changeling until like the second season, the end of the second season. And Kira was a resistance fighter for the Bajoran resistance until, the Bajoran won, and now she is part of the Bajoran army.
Yeah.
And they're both kind of, well, I won't say Odo is kind of an outsider, and he doesn't have a lot of friends, and Kira is one of his very few friends. And while in the first season they're only friends, sometimes during the second season he starts developing feelings for her.
Yeah. But
And
technically she doesn't like realize she has feelings for him until the 6th season.
so, you know what? That always rubbed me the wrong way. Because at first he developed feelings for her, and she had no feelings for him at all.
Yeah.
She always had a different boyfriend. She had 2 different boyfriends. She never had any indication that she has any feelings for him at all. And at some point he got over her.
Mm-hmm.
When you realized she has feelings for someone else. And it was resolved in a very sweet episode, I think, when he realized that she is developing feelings for someone else. And he has a talk with Quark, of all people, and Quark tells him, either confess your feelings or let her go. And Odo makes the decision to let her go. And I think it's very nice. It's a very nice resolution. And then, 2 seasons later, suddenly he has feelings again for some reason.
He has feelings again, and she's had a moment of clarity, I think she puts
Yeah, it was extremely contrived. Like,
yes.
it's not even that she has a moment of clarity. The story itself is so, I can't start explaining. It's so stupid, actually.
I mean, it's what she calls it. It is stupid.
No, but here's the thing. Odo suddenly has feelings for her, and there is this holosuit program that is basically this all-knowing bartender.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, Odo, if you have feelings for her, I can teach you how to be someone who is completely not yourself, and that will make her fall in love with you. And then it works. And it's so weird. Like, she has a moment of clarity when she sees Odo behaving in a way that is completely out of his character. Okay.
But it's not like he then is forever changed to Odo. He's himself.
Yeah, which makes this relationship even weirder. She didn't have any feelings for him as himself.
But let's talk about, the fact after they have that kiss in the middle of public.
Yeah. By the way, this entire story happens in one episode.
Yes.
Just one episode.
Yes.
All those feelings are explored for like 4 seasons, and Kira develops feelings in one episode. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so they're suddenly in a relationship, and they're publicly in a relationship because they've kissed each other in the middle of
The promenade. Yeah.
the promenade.
hard to miss.
After that, how do you feel about their, like, once they're in the relationship together? Because then they have like 2 seasons of.
They have like a season and change.
A season and okay, we'll say a season and change. So they have a season and change of being together.
Yeah.
They have some nice moments.
They do, but they also have some not very nice moments.
Yes.
It still feels like a very contrived relationship during this season. It feels like they kind of walked back all those character development. Because his character development was that at first he wanted to discover who he was. Like, literally, he didn't know even what species he was. But then he kind of had to, like, make a choice. Is he going to be part of his species who are intergalactic tyrants? Or is he going to be loyal to the humanoids who weren't always very nice to him? A lot of the time they kind of rejected him for being different. And through the seasons, he kind of made a choice to stay with the humanoids who are his family, basically. But then, in that last season and change, when he was with Kira, all of this is kind of thrown out of the window. And then they kind of tell us that the only reason he was staying with the humanoids wasn't because he, like, developed his moral code or because he didn't like the way his species was behaving. It was because he was in love with Kira. And if Kira had rejected him, he wouldn't have stayed there. He would have gone to be a tyrannical intergalactic warlord.
I know.
And it's a very bad writing decision. It's like, it kind of feels like they were trying to make the relationship better than it was. Like, make Kira more special to him than she should have been, basically.
Whereas they could have really just stayed friends. And because, to be honest, like, they had nice moments as a couple, but if you had, like, put that in a lens of friendship instead of romantically, it would have been just as nice.
Exactly. and I mean, I think the relationship could have been written well. It just wasn't.
And it was shoved in towards the end.
Well, yeah, but I mean, there was a build-in for it. They did build on for it with all those feelings, but so it wasn't like Troy and Worf suddenly getting together. There was like a background for it, but the writing of it was like it wasn't real well written in those last couple of seasons. It really wasn't.
Yeah, but honestly, if you build up and then you sort of like close the case on it and then go on 2 seasons without it, you know, fans probably are just starting to get over the fact that it's not going to happen.
Yeah,
and then you just throw it back.
Yeah.
Back into the storyline, so it's very chaotic.
Yeah. I mean, I think Otto's writing in general became worse during the 6th and 7th seasons for that exact reason. Like, it was suddenly a lot more sympathetic to his species' tyrannical ways for some reason. Like, he was abandoning his friends. It wasn't explained at all. And then Kira was given this reason that he didn't go over to the dark side, which, I mean, it makes the character look a lot worse. Doesn't make him look better. And I mean, we can talk about Kira's other relationships, which are kind of interchangeable and kind of nothing, because there was Vedek, what's his face, and and Prime Minister what's his face, which I can't remember their names because they were basically the same cardboard cutout of a man, because they had no personality at all, and they were there and then they weren't. I mean, the Vedek got like a nice death scene, which, I mean, it was sad for Kira because she loved him, but then he died. And he died heroically, so that's nice for him. But I'm pretty sure she just broke up with the Prime Minister guy off screen.
Agreed.
Yeah. That's all I have to say about Kira. For now.
Well, do you want to mention Odo then, briefly, with Luxano?
Oh yeah, Roxana makes a few visits to Deep Space Nine, and when she's there, she apparently has a type for the old grumpy guys. But her relationship with Otto is a lot nicer than the one she has with Picard, because I think Otto is a little less full of himself than Picard. Otto is mostly standoffish because he's insecure, and she kind of recognizes it, and she teases him a bit, but she also kind of coaxes him out of his shell. And while she has feelings for him, he only wants to be friends, and she respects it.
Yeah.
He even marries her to get her out of a bad relationship.
Yes.
And then when he actually starts entertaining having a relationship with her, she says, "No, you don't actually have feelings for me. I know that."
Yeah.
So they have a very nice relationship. They're very good friends. And I am glad they didn't end up romantically. And I really like the relationship.
Okay, should we just really quick before we get into
The big one.
the big ones and stuff? Should we talk about like Cisco and Cassidy?
Yeah, we can talk about Cisco and Cassidy. It is cute. Cisco, the captain, is probably the only captain out of all the captains so far who has a stable relationship with a sort of happy ending.
I was gonna say, like,
Yeah. I mean, Cisco is the only captain who isn't like married to his job. I think he has a family. He in the start of the show we see him losing his wife, but he still has a kid to raise.
Yeah.
And we get to see him raise that kid throughout the series. And a few seasons, I think during season 3, maybe 2, but I think it was 3, he meets a woman. Yeah, she's not part of the main cast. She's a human. Her name is Cassidy Yates. And they just hit it off, and they have a very standard but a very sweet relationship.
And so this is what I was mentioning when I was saying, like, not all the captains are kind of like Kirk, married to the ship, or
but I think Cisco. Yeah, but Cisco is kind of an outlier. I think of all the captains. No other captain had family. No other captain.
Yeah, he is. He really is an outlier.
Yeah.
You already know he's had a marriage. He has a kid. And to see him get to do love again, like, it's kind of a normal thing in a show, right?
Yeah.
As far as,
yeah, and I think it's very sweet that, the person who introduces him and Cassidy's son, Jake.
Yeah.
Is like, Dad, I found a woman that would be perfect for you.
Exactly.
So you don't get it, like, there's sometimes the concept of, like, a kid, doesn't want his dad's new girlfriend to replace his mom, but Jake is like, no, Dad, you need someone.
Yeah.
That's kind of nice. It really exemplifies the good relationship Cisco has with his son.
Yeah, it does. I agree.
And one last, unless you have anything more to add about Cisco and Cassidy.
No.
One last canon pairing before we hit the biggest canon pairing is Rob and Lita, who had like maybe 5 episodes, but they were so sweet. They really were. I think they are the only ones who got an actual good ending. Oh, about Cassidy and Cisco, of course. The ending. Yeah, I mean, Deep Space Nine's ending is very weird. At the end, Cisco kind of becomes a prophet, which is like a kind of incorporeal alien.
Uh-huh.
but then he comes to Cassidy in a vision and tells her we'll be back. And that's it.
Yeah, that's just... I mean, I tend to ignore that because the writing, I mean...
And I want to say, I mean, at this point, he and Cassidy were married, and Cassidy was pregnant with their kid.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I think Avery Brooks, the guy who played Cisco, also kind of insisted on having this kind of last vision of Cisco saying he'll return. I think originally the writers didn't even think about doing that because he very much did not want to be the example of the stereotype of the deadbeat black father.
Yes, exactly. But it's just not a good look altogether. I mean,
yeah,
it's no way to tie up loose ends.
Yeah. It's a very weird. But Lita and Rom actually did have a happy ending. They had okay, so Rom is a Ferengi
Yeah.
who works on the station. He starts working in his brother's bar, but he then moves on to engineering because he's a talented engineer. And he's kind of stupid, but he's also kind of kind of really sweet. And Lita is a Bajoran devil girl who works for Quark. And they just kind of, develop feeling for each other. And they start dating. And then they decide to get married.
Yeah.
And that's it, basically.
Yeah.
They're very cute and very in love.
I kind of equated it to sort of like the O'Briens relationship. Like, it's just one of those like background. Oh, it works out, you know.
I can see that.
I guess the only way I could equate it when you have a sideline story of two ensigns on a ship. You think of like the original series where you knew there were some ensigns who were in love and wanting to get married, and then of course one of them dies. They can't get married. Typical original series stuff, but you knew other relationships were going on with the crew.
Yeah.
Because they're all together all the time and those things happen.
Yeah.
To me, what's exemplified is there's other minor characters in the show that have relationships and they work out and everything's fine.
Yeah. I mean, I think it comes with the added bonus of like development of the Ferengis species and as characters on Deep Space Nine, because Rom starts out as a very typical Ferengi man, very misogynistic, very, greedy, and his relationship with Lita comes with him kind of drawing back from Ferengi culture.
Yeah.
He still holds on to some of it, but he gives up his money for Lita. He doesn't mind her wearing clothes. He stops working for his brother and starts working for the station.
Okay, so let's go on to the major.
Yeah. So the biggest pairing on Deep Space Nine is the pairing of Worf, who joined in the 4th season, and Jadzia Dax. I think it's the pairing that gets the most screen time. We see its development the most.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think it's kind of a popular pairing all around. Both fans liked it. A lot of fans liked it, both in Fanon and in Canon.
It's just sometimes those canon pairings, they're done well. They just they have the right pace for the character development and like the feelings and things, and then it just kind of ends in a place where everybody's happy with it. I mean, well, to a point. They end up married. They have a Klingon wedding. It's awesome.
Yeah. I did feel at some points that it was a little bit unbalanced because Jadzia is very obviously a fan of Klingon culture, but we never really see Worf going out of his way, to respect Trill culture.
Yeah.
But that's really my only complaint about this pairing.
But yeah, I also think of Worf trying to understand why Deanna liked taking a walk on the beach with him. And she's like, they couldn't get to the same, it's romantic. He's like, it's stimulating. She's like, I just don't get you sometimes. So I kind of chalk it up to Worf thing. I mean, I agree, in a really functional relationship, you try to assimilate into each other's cultures. At least somewhat understand each other, where everybody comes from and how the relationship is affected by the culture and stuff. But Dax was Klingons.
Yeah, Dax had a bit of a Klingon fetish.
Yeah, I mean, so I just kind of saw it as she's just really happy to be so into the Klingon world.
Yeah, I mean, I also think it's a bit of Dax, she has a symbiont and memories of past lives where she lived her whole life on Trill. So she's probably I've lived with Trill culture my entire life. I don't mind giving it up for this lifetime. Just a minute. But then again, all good things come to an end.
Yes.
because of behind the curtains, backstage drama. Jadzia's actress Terry Farrell had to leave the show after the sixth season, and so they killed off her character.
Which, let's be clear, it was tragic in a sense, but it would have been a bigger tragedy had she not been a Trill. And I only say that because they bring Dax back. They just can bring back another actress, and it's a new character, but it's not a new character.
Yeah, in a sense, that's true.
But sad for Worf because it's not his Dax.
Yeah, exactly. It is a new character. She has all of Jadzia's memories, but she's not Jadzia.
Right.
And we're talking, of course, about Ezri Jax. Now, I think in the original run of the series, people didn't like Ezri. I mean, most people don't like the new character that gets added at the last minute. But I really like her. I think she's a very unique character. I think she was really well written for the short amount of time she was on. She was well written in every aspect, besides the romantic aspect. Okay, so she was there for one season, only the 7th season. One season, and that season, she managed to enter into a love triangle with Worf and Bashir. Now, Worf didn't actually like Ezri. He just reminded him of his dead wife.
I know, that's what I didn't understand. There's this point where, she's come back and they're having this conversation. He's asking her opinion about something, and it kind of sidelines into him saying, like, well, you're still part of my house. And she's like, yeah, okay, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm with you. I don't sense like he recognizes this is not his wife. And the feelings don't translate.
Yeah, what I like about Ezri is that she's very much not Jadzia, and it's very obvious. She doesn't even try to be Jadzia. She's very much, no, I'm Ezri, Jadzia was someone else. And in a lot of ways, it's very refreshing because, unlike Jadzia, for example, she doesn't have a Klingon fetish. So when she sees a Klingon is doing something stupid, she's like, no, that's stupid.
Mm-hmm. The personality's just different. So let's talk about Bashir and her for a minute, because that was awkward.
That was very awkward. Like we said, Bashir and Dax and Jadzia. Bashir had a crush on Jadzia, but he got over it.
And there's even a point where everybody else recognizes how awkward it is when they're talking to each other. And I don't know why they were trying to sell that as a relationship, because even Worf is like, yeah, he's like an overgrown child and she's confused.
Yeah.
So what is this, like a schoolyard awkward moment?
He's so right, though. He
is right.
Like, she just got, joined with a symbiote. Unlike Jadzia, she never actually wanted to be joined with a symbiote. She just kind of... She wasn't forced into it, but she kind of... the story is that, they were moving the symbiote back to Trill to find a host, but the ship was under attack.
Yeah.
And they weren't getting there on time, and the symbiote was dying, and she was the only Trill on the ship, so she decided to try and accept the symbiote herself.
Yeah.
To save it. And it took, and now she can't separate from it, so she's kind of forced to be with a symbiote. She never wanted it in the first place. She was kind of thrust into it. And that makes her very, very different from basically every other Trill that joined with the symbiote before.
So what do you think was the writer's intention with why? Okay, you need to bring in you're going to bring in a new Dax. You've had some trouble off screen. You lost an actress. You bring another character on, do some hand waving. But what was the point of forcing the relationship in the last season?
I think it's really just the same point as having Worf be with Deanna in the last season. They're just like, we're going to go in a completely unexpected direction. And it also came completely out of nowhere. I mean, in one of the third last episode from the last one, Bashir and Miles are having this heart-to-heart, and Bashir just like, I think I'm in love with Ezri. And what? Why? Since when?
Exactly. Okay. All right. So we're agreed. It's awkward and it's weird.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone liked it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
I'm not really a fan of let's bring in a new character and then force them romantically with another character like
yeah.
right away. I prefer the feelings to develop.
Yeah. So those were the canon pairings.
And there were a number of them.
Yeah, but now we're getting to the really interesting stuff. Because here is the... Oh, wait, before we end with the canon pairings, or if you're talking about one-sided pairings, are Ducat and Kira even worth mentioning?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, well, Gal Ducat, I don't think we ever actually learned his first name.
No.
Yeah. So Gal Ducat was the tyrannical dictator, Cardassian dictator, who ruled Bajor during the occupation, enslaved all the Bajorans, destroyed their planet, and he had a crush on Major Kira Nerys, who hates his guts for obvious reasons. I think the writers actually wanted to make them canon for a while, and Kira's actress, Nana Visitor, she said no. She put her foot down because she was right. It makes absolutely no sense.
It makes no sense. Like,
yeah,
it would be... People would just be like, what is happening? Is she in a non-consensual relationship with the enemy? What's going on?
Exactly. It made absolutely no sense. And then, as a compromise, they had him bang her mother. I mean, it sounds so stupid, but it's true.
Yeah. It just would never have worked. I mean, you can't have the bad guy destroy her people and just have her fall in love with him.
Yeah, it just doesn't work.
It leaves a bad taste in the mouth.
And I mean, the relationship they had between Ducat and Kira's mother also leaves a very bad taste in the mouth. I don't know why they had to go with that, really. Okay, so do we move on to the Fanon pairings?
Yes, so Fanon pairings.
Well, the most popular one is between Bashir and probably the most popular recurring character ever in Star Trek history. Garak, Ilim Garak, the Cardassian spy, Taylor. Yeah, the Cardassian spy who is really just a simple tailor who lives on the station. He was exiled from Cardassia, and he mostly likes to run around and cause problems. Bashir has a bit of a James Bond fetish. Yeah. He, in the same way, if I notice a pattern here, Jadzia has a Klingon fetish, and she ends up with a Klingon, and Ducat has a bit of a Bajoran fetish, and yeah, Bashir has a kind of a James Bond fetish. He loves the whole spy game. Mm-hmm. Yeah, spy aesthetic. The thing is, Garak isn't the sort of spy from Bashir's fantasies. He's like a realistic spy. He was very unglamorous and does a lot of dirty work.
A lot of dirty work.
Yeah. So, Garak is also significantly older than Bashir. You do get the sense that they're flirting. Whenever they meet up on screen, they seem to be flirting. And
yeah.
From Garak's actor, it was intentional, and the writers noticed, and the showrunner did not like this at all. So he had them not appear as much together, which the fans hate very much. Yeah. They could have been the first real on-screen, stable LGBT relationship.
Yes, I agree.
But they were not.
Here's the thing. When fans watch a show, they can tell who has chemistry.
Yeah.
Together. Or when people are flirting together, and it's acting, but it's good acting. Do you know what I mean? It works. Just the way they interacted together worked. It made people interested in them. And so it's no wonder it made them interested in them as a couple.
And a lot of people theorize that the reason Ezri and Bashir were thrown into each other's arms in the last season was in an attempt to cover up the fact that Bashir and Garak had so much more chemistry.
Yes, exactly. The fans will do as they will. It's what fandom is for. So sorry to Ezri, but Bashir and Garak, I mean, like, number one fanon pairing in Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, and I think they are the most popular fanon pairing in Star Trek outside of the original series.
Yeah, I would agree with that, actually. They're the most well-known outside of, like, Kirk and Spock.
Yeah. So they obviously hit like a dynamic that worked for many people.
Yeah.
And in terms of Femslash, Deep Space Nine had a very big community shipping Jadzia Dax and Kira.
Yeah.
They did have a complementary aesthetic, you can say. Kira has red hair and red uniform, and Jadzia with blue eyes and blue uniform. And they were close friends. I feel about it the same way I feel about Geordi and Data. I think they're good friends. I can see why people ship them, but they're just kind of boring for me.
Mm-hmm. I could see the reason why people would ship them if they were going to ship any fem/pairing, because they are close.
They are close, and they're well-developed characters, which, when it comes to female characters in Star Trek, is certainly not very common.
That's true. Even when they're talking about their feelings with each other, it's just like, it's like a genuine friendship, so...
Yeah. You get the feeling they really do value each other.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's exactly what I feel about Geordi and Data. They're also genuine friends. It's very friendly, it's very wholesome, it's kind of boring.
Can we talk about a pairing that is a little more antagonistic?
Oh, yeah. Quark and Odo. Listen, they may not be the most traditionally attractive people on the station.
No.
But their dynamic is so loaded. If you like pairings, I think, there are people who like enemies to lovers, right?
Yeah.
But with Quark and Odo, they're enemies, but they're also friends.
Yeah.
And they're not neither of them is really like the bad guy. They're just some guys.
Yeah.
Quark and Odo's friendship is kind of interesting because, well, up until season 6, where Odo's character gets kind of thrown out the window.
And even Odo notices that. Remember, like, when Kira shows up, Odo's in the middle of, like, telling him all these violations, and and like, you do this and that and the other, and then, like, Kira shows up and he just completely forgets what he's doing and walks out with her. And Quark is like, what is going on? He just walked out.
Yeah, but I mean, before that, they were good friends, and I think the relationship, the friendship kind of helped develop both of their characters.
Yeah.
They are such good friends, like maybe even best friends, that Quark was the first person to notice that Odo had a crush on Kira.
So to me, there's this classic trope where it's the officer of the law and the lawbreaker.
Yeah. I mean,
hook up.
What?
That's what I'm saying. It's like the officer of the law and the lawbreaker trope where they suddenly develop feelings for each other and hook up or whatever. Like, that to me is the Quark-Odo relationship.
I mean, I think the funniest thing about this dynamic is that people aren't really like, oh, they stop being enemies. No, they continue to be enemies.
Exactly.
And friends and lovers all at the same time. And of course, well, we can't talk about Quark and Odo without mentioning the kiss. Of all the pairings, of all the fanon pairings, to get a blooper kiss. It was them.
Yeah.
You would think Garrick and Bashir would have
I
something.
know. I was
no.
just thinking, like, think about how wild it would have been if Bashir and Garrick had the kiss.
Yeah, it would have been crazy. But no, it was Odo and Quark, of all characters who kiss in a blooper. Yeah.
So I'd say the rest of the pairings are kind of like not even main character.
Yeah, that's true. I think most of them are kind of side characters. Like, I mean, we talked about enemies to lovers, but what about a pairing of enemies, like a pairing of bad guys? So we have Damaro and Wayun. Wayun is Vorta, which is kind of this sniveling, I don't know how to call it exactly, a sniveling bureaucratic race that is like subservient to the changelings. And Damar is a Cardassian leader, which is like, he starts out under Gul Dukat. He's a big fan of Gul Dukat. And then when Dukat goes crazy, he becomes the leader of Cardassia, but he has to deal with Cardassia becoming a member of the Dominion, which means he's under the changeling rule as well. And he hates it. He really, really hates it. Damar and Wayun is kind of tasked with being like the correspondent between the changelings and the Cardassians, so he has to deal with Damar a lot. And Damar hates him a lot. And a lot of people kind of like this antagonistic, weird, evil pairing.
I always thought it was kind of rare for Trek, the two antagonists being a popular like fan and pairing, because usually it's the protagonist and an antagonist.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's because there aren't that many Star Trek antagonists.
Yeah. Usually the antagonist is like the star of the show on their side, and they're working with like another bad guy group. It is like a subservient type role.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there is that trope of like an overlord and his underling, but this is not that.
Because Wayun is an underling, but he's an underling to the changeling.
Exactly.
he kind of executes better than the Cardassians.
Yeah.
And of course, Cardassians being very proud don't like that.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't really see the appeal, but if people enjoy it, there they go. Well, another fan pairing is the pairing of Jake, Captain Sisko's son, and Nog, Rom's son. When the series begins, they're very much kids. And we kind of get to see their friendship, and it's a very unique situation because Ferengis were, up until that point, kind of usually presented as the bad guys.
Yeah.
And even Sisko, despite, being, not having any prejudice and everything, he kind of doesn't want his son to hang out with a Ferengi.
Uh-huh.
But then he kind of was, he was being a bigot, and Nog is basically a good kid who just didn't have a lot of, options when he was growing up. So Jake and Nog kind of become these best friends, and they remain best friends throughout the entire series. And the dynamic kind of changes because when they're kids, Jake is like the good kid, and Nog is kind of the
mischievous,
the youth delinquent.
Yeah, youth delinquent.
Yeah. And then when they grow up, it kind of actually changes because Jake becomes this slacker who doesn't know what to do with his life, while Nog actually buckles down and joins Starfleet.
So the thing I like about this pairing, even though, like I said, it's kind of like it's not really a main character pairing.
Mm-hmm.
They're both side characters. Is that it's your typical like childhood friends, best friends, to lovers type trope.
And I think it's kind of unique in the sense that they're childhood friends as opposed to just regular friends.
Yeah.
And I think it's another one of those, when a character doesn't have much luck with women, because Nog is shown to not have a lot of luck with women. Yeah, another one of those. One last pairing I want to discuss is Kira and Kretak. Now, Kretak didn't appear a lot in the show. She appeared for a few episodes in season 7. But I kind of want to mention her because I think it's interesting that in the season we finally get, Kira and Odo together, Kira has more chemistry on screen with a character that appears in like a handful of episodes. Kretak is like a Romulan delegate that comes to the station. At first, she seems very friendly and polite, and then we find out Romulan is kind of two-faced.
Exactly.
But yeah, they have a lot of chemistry.
Is it weird that it kind of reminded me of Spock and the Romulan Commander?
No, because I was thinking the same thing. They really do have that kind of chemistry.
Yeah. It's brief but intense.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that wraps it up for Deep Space Nine. I mean,
there are a lot of like Bashir has a few one-off girlfriends. Quark has a few one-off girlfriends. When we said Bashir was going to be the womanizer, I think Quark ended up being the womanizer of the show.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
There's also, Quark's mother, Ishka, and the Grand Nagus of Ferenginar. Yeah, they are very. I think they're kind of a funny side pairing. That's their whole. That's their whole point. They're the funny couple.
So, anything else to add about Deep Space Nine?
Quark and Grilka should have stayed together.
A lot going on, but as to be expected. I mean, it's a station where people come and go, and sometimes the lasting friendships or relationships are built.
Yeah. I think Deep Space Nine had the most canon and Fanon pairings because it fleshed out the characters the most. It had a very big cast of characters, and most of them were very fleshed out.
Yeah.
So, on to the next one.
Star Trek Voyager.
Star Trek Voyager.
I say let's just start with the most, I'd say, popular and probably most accepted canon pairing.
Yeah.
B'Elanna and Tom.
B'Elanna and Tom Paris. Yeah. So Tom Paris is this former youth delinquent, current hotshot pilot, and who doesn't play by the rules. And B'Elanna is this very hot-headed, very strong-minded engineer who's half Klingon. And at first, it doesn't seem like they would get along, but I actually think their relationship ended up being very interesting.
It did. But, I think she tells Tom in the beginning, I thought you were an arrogant pig.
Yeah. And she had a point.
Yes, she did.
It's not always the best written, the relationship. I mean, there are some episodes where you're like, this is so 90s. Like there's an episode where Tom, comes back after, an away mission, and B'Elanna has, this surprise for him. She set up an old school TV for him because Tom has this obsession with all the Earth things. Yeah. I don't know why. And she set up a television for him, and he's more interested in the television than her. And it's so 90s.
It's very classic. It is very classic 90s.
Yeah.
Even the way in which they propose marriage.
Yeah.
Is classic 90s, to be honest. That whole conversation.
Yeah, and I mean, the weird thing about this relationship is that we didn't get to see their wedding.
Very true. I was just thinking back to, the different weddings that we have seen. And I was like, wait a minute, this is... And you would think, being, I guess, the most stable pairing of the show, people would have expected the payoff with the wedding.
Yeah, I mean, I think people actually asked the writers about it, and in one of the earlier episodes, in when the character has hallucinations, we do see not a hallucination. The episode with I think the parallel Voyager ship, we do see a wedding of B'Elanna and Tom. But they're not our B'Elanna and Tom. They're different B'Elanna and Tom. So they're like, well, we only showed that, so we didn't want to show another wedding. And I was like, that's such a stupid reason. I'm sorry, but that is a really stupid reason. I think the real reason is because the writers of Voyager weren't very. The writing of Voyager wasn't very good. I'll say that.
Yes.
And at some point, you kind of got the impression that they only care about like a handful of characters, and B'Elanna and Tom weren't those characters.
No, they weren't.
Yeah. So they got less and less screen time and less development, and I think the writers were kind of like, you don't need to show the wedding, like, doesn't matter. And it's really sad. It really is very sad.
I wasn't ever really that invested in like Tom and B'Elanna, just because I knew as it was presented in the show, it was like a done thing, if you know what I mean. There was not going to be any. I didn't feel like there was going to be any surprise in their relationship at the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think it wasn't like obvious from the beginning they were going to end up together. It did take some time for them to kind of get together, but at the end of it, it was kind of obvious.
Yeah, I didn't feel they were going to be like, surprise, you know, they broke up or they're no longer together or somebody else showed up and got in the middle. I mean, so it wasn't a Worf and Troy situation.
Yeah, that's very true.
For the people who like their relationship, it was something you could really count on. So that was good for the show, at least.
Yeah, I mean, it was good. I just wish the writers actually cared about it.
Well, right. They, you know, at a certain point, they're just like, done and dusted, and it's not the focus. So moving on.
Yeah. Before we move on to a few other pairings, I want to mention Cass.
Oh, yeah.
Cass. So at first, Cass was brought on the show as a girlfriend of Neelix. And they were both natives to the Delta Quadrants where the Voyager was stuck. And a lot of people kind of felt that this relationship was very weird.
Yes.
And I agree. I mean, okay, so Cass's species only lives for 9 years. And she is 2 years old. And okay, I mean, she doesn't look 2 years old, and for her species, she is an adult. So I can accept that. But her relationship with Neelix was still kind of weird. Because Neelix is kind of weird.
Yes. Yes.
And then she had this weird sort of relationship with Tom, and it was a whole mess. It's really sad. I think Cass had the potential to be an interesting character, and from what I heard, the way they fired the actress was not very nice. But yeah. But the way they handled her was very bad.
So you're saying if there could have been a potential another love interest for Tom?
I mean, she wasn't potential another love interest, but it was, I think, before
one that actually got developed.
I mean, I don't know if I really like this. I don't think the relationship with Tom actually added anything to his or her character.
Right.
But I do think she had the potential to be a good character, but she was bogged down by those stupid romantic relationships, honestly. Well, then, after Cass left, in season 4, we got another addition to the crew in the form of former Borg 7 of 9.
Let's start with the Doctor in 7 of 9.
Yeah.
So this was kind of funny to me, only because if you're a fan of this canon or this pairing, let's say, there's one episode, where they're singing "You Are My Sunshine" together, and it's really about the Doctor who is learning more about interacting with the crew and whatnot, but he phrased it to her as people who are interested in each other try to learn more about each other, what they like and dislike, and where their common interests lie, and she's just not getting it. 7 of 9 is just why are you talking to me about this? How is this relevant to what we're doing? But somehow he coaxes her into singing with him. And I just find it funny because,
Yeah,
to be honest, it never made any sense to me.
me neither. And it felt even weirder than the relationship with Cass because okay, so my I think a lot of people's problem with Cass was that she was like 2 years old in the show, but
Yeah.
again, her species only lives for 9 years, and she was an adult, so it's not like she was actually a child. But Seven of Nine she became a Borg when she was 6.
Yes.
And when she stopped being a Borg, she had the mental maturity of being 6 years old. And then, she had the body of a mature woman, that's true, but I don't know, it just feels a little creepy that that this guy is just developing a crush on her when she has all the maturity and experience of a
When
6 years
she's
old.
so young.
She's
Mentally young.
mentally young.
Yes.
Yeah. She has no life experience.
Right, she's not experienced. She doesn't really understand the interactions they're having
Yeah.
in a capacity that even he does in him being a
Hologram.
hologram.
Yeah.
So it does feel a little weird and a little creepy.
Yeah. It feels creepy. To me, it feels creepy.
Yeah. And I'm not sure why they went there. Like, I
Yeah,
could see two people I could see him trying to make a connection to her because both of them don't understand themselves.
That's true. I can see them connecting on other levels, and they didn't have to be romantic.
Right, but it could have been like a friendship.
Yeah. It could have been a really good friendship too.
So I don't understand why there was that whole thing.
Yeah, and honestly, he wasn't even the only character that they had to act this way. I mean, Harry Kim also had a very creepy kind of crush on Seven.
Yeah. So let's talk about 7 of 9 and Chakotay.
Yeah. So, like we said, the tendency of Star Trek writers to just come up with a pairing out of nowhere. And just in the 7th season, one of the last episodes, just kind of sticks Seven and Chakotay together. I don't understand why. I really don't. What was the point of that? Who asked for this? Who wanted this?
Nobody.
Did they even interact at all before? I don't remember them interacting.
and all I remember is just going like, ew, why is he saying he wants to be like within like, transporting distance of her? Does that make any sense?
I don't understand. I think no one understands this decision.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really, really weird. Which is made even weirder considering that, the most popular pairings of the show, of the show Fanon, was Chakotay and Janeway.
Or Janeway and 7 of 9.
I think Chakotay and Janeway was more popular.
Definitely more popular, but yeah. It's like Chakotay and 7 of 9 are with anybody but themselves, but each other.
Yeah. No, I mean, they both are shipped with Janeway way more. I mean, no one wants them with each other, but people want them with Janeway. As far as Chakotay and Janeway go, I feel like the writers kind of teased us about it in the first few seasons, like first couple of seasons, and then like Crusher and Picard, it sort of fizzled out. Yeah. Only it had even less of a history than Crusher and Picard. Yeah. I kind of understand why, though. I think Janeway's actress, she didn't want to be be written in a romantic relationship, and I understand that because at the time when a female character was written in a romantic relationship, that's all she was, a romantic interest,
and she was the lead of the show.
Exactly, and she didn't want to be that. She wanted to be, the captain. So it made sense why she was like, no, don't write me in a romantic relationship. That made sense to me. And it also made sense to me because Chakotay is kind of nothing of a character.
You said it.
I'm sorry.
You said it. I didn't say it. You said it. But I was thinking it.
I'm sorry, but just like, what is there to ship here? Chakotay has no personality.
He doesn't. He has no personality. Still. He's not... Of all the characters, he's definitely one of my least favorite. Just because, like, what is the point?
Yeah,
of being
exactly.
invested in his character when he's literally like the same from beginning to end.
Yeah. He has no character. I'm
Yeah.
really sorry to Chakotay fans, and I'm sorry to the genuine Chakotay fans, but like, I don't understand you.
However, Janeway and
However,
Seven of Nine.
yeah, genuine 7 of 9. They are popular. I get this ship in a mentor mentee student has a crush on a teacher sort of way. Because Janeway is kind of the mentor of 7 of 9. She mentors her in the ways of humans, basically, in how to be a human, how not to fear her emotions, and they become close friends and confidants. And it is like a kind of a student teacher, mentor mentee relationship. So I can see that, you know, Seven developing sort of feelings for Janeway. When it comes to Janeway returning those feelings, like I said, I think it's maybe years down the line. But like right now, with Seven freshly out of Borg territory, it feels a little creepy.
Yeah. Especially when you realize that like part of Janeway's role as her mentor is it's not just like helping somebody acclimate in a career or something of that nature. It's helping this child grow up.
Exactly.
That then kind of nudges it into like parent child territory, which then can make it
I would,
it's not there,
yeah,
but it can make it very
yeah,
uncomfortable in the beginning if you thought about it
yeah.
as a pairing in the beginning. So, but by the end of the show,
Yeah, by the end of the show, they are more on equal
they are
footing.
exactly once they're on equal footing. I think that factor is no longer plays a part, and so then I can see why Janeway 7 of 9 is so popular because they have
Yeah,
they're it's very much like Janeway and her right hand,
yep,
and it's a lot very similar to like a Kirk Spock type thing. So
yeah, that's true. That's very true. Because Seven is this logical kind of outsider voice, and yeah, basically. Another pairing that is becoming popular in like I think recent years. I haven't seen it before, but it really is becoming popular in recent years. Is Seven and Belana, which I think it's interesting. It's more of it's more. It's if we said Janeway and Seven is Spock and Kirk, I think Seven and Belana may be Spock and McCoy because they are kind of antagonistic.
yeah,
And you have Belana being very hot-blooded and quick to anger, and also they snipe at each other a lot.
they do. I was
Yeah.
actually gonna say, yeah, this is very much like a Spone situation.
So yeah, I see the appeal. They are more on equal footing than Janeway and Seven, and they have this complementary kind of friendly rivalry, and they do become friends over the course of the show.
Yep, the magic words there are friendly rivalry.
Exactly.
That is a very popular, I'd say,
Dana.
dynamic, and people love to see that turned into like a ship.
Yeah.
Our last popular, maybe I don't know if I call them popular, but pairings.
I think Carrie, Kim, and Tom Paris are kind of popular.
Eh,
Uh, um, I mean, compared to others, I guess.
yeah, I was gonna say like the last ones would be with Tom Paris, Harry Kim and Tom Paris, or Chakotay and
Yeah.
Tom Paris.
Well, Chakotay and Tom Paris, once again, I don't understand the appeal of shipping Chakotay with anyone.
But for those who understand her somehow understand the appeal of Chakotay, period.
I mean, I think it might be the same appeal of Janeway and Seven in the sense of mentor mentee
Yeah.
kind of thing. But again, but unlike Janeway, Chakotay has no personality. Yeah.
Okay, so Harry
Um,
Kim and Tom.
yeah, they're best friends. They're also kind of antagonistic because Tom is kind of the cool kid and Harry is kind of the nerd, and they are friends, but Tom also kind of bullies Harry a little.
It's very different from like a Jake Nog situation.
Yeah, yeah, because they're not. I don't think they're as good friends.
Right.
They're good friends, but not like you don't get the sense of like they're best friends, like Jordy and Data, or Nog and Jake, or even
they're in the thick of it
Kira and
together.
Rex.
If they're in trouble,
Yeah.
you'll find them both. You'll find them in trouble together.
Yeah.
It's not that type of situation.
I mean, you will probably find them together
Well-
mostly because Tom decided to make trouble and he dragged Harry along. But it's not like you don't get the sense they're like the best, super best friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other pairings? Maybe even if they're random pairings.
I'm trying to think. You know, it's interesting to me that no one really ships Janeway and Tuvok.
You know, that's exactly where my mind went. I was like, wait about Tuvok. I was like, well, nobody should ship him with anybody.
which is sad because I like Tuvok.
Yeah, he's a good character.
Yeah.
Why is it that we kind of inherently draw the line at him being in a romance?
I don't know.
It's because he's too good. You just don't want to put him through that mess.
No, I don't think so. I don't want to say that. I mean,
I guess the whole point here is shipping Tuvok with someone in Voyager is not frequent.
he's not frequent.
And there's really no canon material for that.
He's married.
Yeah.
But his wife is in another quad.
Right, yeah.
Like I said, if I would actually expect people to ship Tuvok and Janeway, but it didn't happen. There was like this one episode where they pretended to be a couple so that someone will leave Janeway alone, and they are the best friends. You know,
Yeah.
they are what I think Harry and Tom want to be. They really give you a sense of we are best friends.
The good thing is they're like friends with common sense.
Well, Tuvok has common sense.
Well, but his common sense is complementary to Janeway.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm kind of disappointed poor people don't ship them. I know he's married and he's not the cheating type, but you know, people did more with less.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, think about all the time Spock shipped with everybody, and you know he's technically got a fiance.
Yeah.
Up until he doesn't.
Yeah, or in the movies where he is literally dating Hura and still shipped with everybody.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But I think that's pretty much it for Voyager. It does have more femme/slash than other series, but that's what happens when you have more female characters than other series.
I was going to say, yes, obviously more female characters. More female characters with more lines.
Yeah, like big roles.
Big roles, yes.
Even though, you know, when you kind of measure it, it's like still most of the crew is still male. The difference is that instead of 2 main female characters, they have 3 main female characters at a time. That's it. Which is good.
But in a sense, a smaller cast of characters than Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, definitely.
So it stands out more that it's like 3 out of like 7 or 8 versus 12.
Yeah. And the last and least, because it was also the shortest series, Enterprise.
So Enterprise, talking about a small cast of characters.
Yeah.
Definitely limited on characters here. Definitely limited when it comes to female characters.
Oh, yeah.
There's...
Well, I mean, compared to the number of main characters there, it's kind of a good ratio, but still.
It is, but you don't hear about, like, Hoshi is in a role as much as... basically, T'Pol stands out more than Hoshi, is my point.
I think there were basically 5 main characters, and of those, only 3 were really developed.
Yes, that is my point.
And those 3 were, of course, Captain Archer, the Vulcan science officer, second in command T'Pol, and the head of engineering, Trip
Tucker, yeah.
Okay, but I think it's important to say that Enterprise was probably the most overtly sexual of all the,
Oh, yes.
and that's surprising considering Deep Space Nine had holosuits that are very explicitly for sex.
Talking about sexual, I mean, you want to talk about a sexual attraction, whatever, like, let's start with Trip and T'Pol, okay? The canon pairing of Enterprise.
Yeah, when I said sexual, I didn't mean that it was like the characters had the most sex.
Exactly,
That's
no.
not true.
What I'm saying, I agree. That's like, no, we're talking about actually having sex. No.
No, we are talking about the one where the characters found the most excuses to wear skimpiest clothing as possible.
And to touch each other. I remember in the beginning, so obviously Trip and T'Pol's relationship, they have that antagonistic relationship in the beginning. Okay? Well, T'Pol kind of has that with everybody, but
yeah.
more so like in your face with Trip. I kind of argue with Archer too, but there's this scene where, okay, they don't really like each other, and yet we've got this long scene of them like rubbing each other down.
Yeah. I think the scene is kind of notorious for, Trip's actor, had a biological reaction that he couldn't control.
Just if you follow the motions of the camera, they spend so much time with like T'Pol like rubbing her legs and her midsection, and then and like rubbing his chest and his back, and him like touching her and doing her ears. Why are we spending a whole 3 minutes? They're having a conversation, like, but having a whole conversation while they're mood lighting and rubbing each other down. So that's what we mean as an example of the show as a whole is more sexual.
Yeah, exactly.
What? Who in their right mind put that into Star Trek? I don't know.
Yeah, I can guess. Yeah. And of course, the excuse is that back then they did have transporters. So when they didn't beam back to the ship, they went by shuttles, and when they came back from wherever they were, they had to decontaminate by rubbing each other with decontamination gel. And I guess they were very lucky because it was never just two guys; it was always a guy and a girl, or two girls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the course of T'Pol and Trip's relationship, obviously, there's a turning point somewhere where they finally, it takes a while, like, admit they have feelings. They kiss each other.
You know what? The emotional buildup of Trip and T'Pol, I think it works.
It does.
It does work. However, the writers also felt that it needed a physical push.
Yeah.
So they had a whole storyline about them giving each other's massages every night.
Yeah.
It was very weird.
To me, they were the most hands-on canon pairing of Star Trek. And it's just not even to say that they were like together at points where they were hands-on with each other.
Yeah.
It's just kind of weird to me.
Yeah. But you know how like I said, the relationship I think it built up pretty well, and I think most people wanted them to end up together.
Yeah.
But like in other series, we said that the writers kind of shoved the couples together at the last minute. In this series, they decided to ruin the couple in the last minute. Yeah. The last episode of Enterprise is notoriously terrible. And we kind of learned that T'Pol and Trip were together for a while, and then they broke up. And then in the last episode, which takes place, 10 years after the next to last episode, Trip dies. Just, it's so bad.
They put effort into their pairing, because you even have this episode where what is it? T'Pol meets like her, well, future self, whatever, slash parallel self. And they
Yeah.
talk about these emotions that you need are going to be with you for a long time that you need to like learn to deal with. Trip can help you with that. Like, I'm so glad I married him. And all I can, for me, it's almost like they were teasing fans.
Yeah,
Only to
they were.
do what they did in the end.
Exactly. Like I said, I don't know why they keep doing that. It's very frustrating. Do they feel they become too predictable, so they have to like throw those things out of like
But that's my
I don't
point.
know.
They didn't do it for Balana and Tom.
Yeah, but I think, like I said, I think they stopped caring about Balana and Tom at some point.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I admit that probably a formula of TV writing is if you have a couple that's together that fans pretty much like, you still put them through turmoil. I mean,
Yeah,
gosh, you want to talk about like Trip and T'Pol and their quote unquote child?
oh.
I mean, like you put them through turmoil, right? But they usually come out stronger for it.
Exactly. The point is not to make the fans frustrated. It's to like make them invested in the relationship.
Right. Even if they break up for a period of time, they like break up and realize that they really miss each other, want each other, whatever, get back together and they're stronger for it. I mean, that's a
Exactly.
formula. So why
The
did
Ross and Rachel formula.
what did they mess up? Like, why not just go with the formula?
I have no idea. I really don't know. Yeah. So in terms of fan pairings, I think some people ship Hoshi and T'Pol, but like you said, Hoshi doesn't get a lot of screen time. Um, Hoshi is kind of doesn't disappears after the second season of the first season even like her and Meriwether, what's his name?
Meriwether.
Yeah, both of them are like they're non-characters. They're on the bridge, but they are non-characters. They're kind of like
I always thought that was
Chakotay.
weird because I thought Hoshi had a history with Archer.
Yeah,
He convinced her to come on to that mission,
exactly.
and yet she's disappears. Like, she's not important anymore. I don't understand. I almost
Yeah,
thought she was
exactly.
like in the beginning when I started watching the show. I thought she was a protege who was going to be like coming to her own, kind of like how Will Riker like character trajectory and learning how to command a ship. It just didn't work.
No, I mean, when I started watching the series, she did have a character and interesting plot bits in the first season,
Yeah.
and then the second season started, and it was like the writers stopped paying attention to her at all.
Yeah.
She just wasn't important anymore, and it stayed that way until the series was over. Yeah, and Meriwether never had a character. I'm so sorry. Um, yeah, I don't even remember his first name. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. We can move on.
Yeah. Well, in terms of not exactly a fan pairing, but I remember watching the first season. I kind of got the impression that they may have wanted to also tease, Archer and Tipo.
So did I. But I was kind of quickly like realized they were headed the Trip route.
Yeah, me too. But it still felt that way for a couple of
It
episodes.
did, and to me, I wasn't surprised by the thought that that could have been a potential because it was like it could have been maybe like a Kirk Spock that actually happened. A captain
Yeah.
and not his first basically, even though that's not what T'Pol technically was.
Yeah, I mean, I also thought maybe they got the inspiration from that, but
Yeah.
then maybe they just kind of figured that it would be more interesting with Trip.
Well, maybe they're just going more of like the the McCoy Spock route.
Yeah,
They're like, oh well, we'll do more classic like they hate each other and then they fall in love.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so speaking of Archer, I mean,
Archer.
there's Fanon pairings with Archer, but
No, I mean, I think the most popular fan pairing of the show is with Archer. It's Archer and Shran.
yeah.
Shran is a recurring Andorian character. And honestly, Shran is kind of the best character. Like every episode is like one of the best episodes because he's just interesting. He's just an interesting character. Um, and yeah, he has this Q thing where he's kind of antagonistic and also weirdly obsessed with Archer, but he's not as annoying as Q.
A lot of people like Shran, so it's really no surprise. I mean, given the way Jonathan and Shran interact, that people like that pairing.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, in the last episode, in the notorious last episode, it also revealed that like Shran is married or something like that, which a lot of people also didn't like.
Enterprise is on the ship is all humans but T'Pol. And what's his the doctor
Phlox.
Yeah, the most popular pairings to come out of that is not like between humans. it's between humans and other races. I find that interesting.
Yeah, I mean, there is one popular pairing that is between humans, which I think is also kind of a thing that was popular in the first season or two, and then kind of got like, you know, phased out, which is Trip and Malcolm Reed.
Oh, right. Malcolm.
They even had like a really intense episode together where they were stuck on a ship and they thought they were going to die. And yeah, I think Reed's actor said years later that he kind of figured that Reed was gay, actually. But again, this was never confirmed on screen, and so some people shipped them. But I think when Trip and T'Pol became more involved, the fandom kind of went that way.
So, what did you think about Malcolm as a character? Just curious.
I think he had some moments. Sometimes I forget he's there. I think he's kind of a comedic relief character, honestly. He's kind of full of himself, and I think they kind of aimed for him to be the womanizer, but it went even worse than Bashir being the womanizer. No one was buying that, so yeah.
Well, if I'm being honest, I think I found like his mirror universe part more interesting.
I mean, it makes sense.
But yeah, I could see why like Malcolm Trip would be a thing. Season 1.
I can see that. Yeah, exactly. I can see in season 1. I understand why people stopped shipping them when Trip and T'Pol became more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And Shran became more interesting too. And that's it, basically. That's all I have to say about Enterprise.
Now, this might surprise you, but I have seen some fans of Archer and Trip. And I wonder if that's not just for people who like thruples, you already have Trip and T'Pol together. Some people kind of like hung on the idea that, Archer and T'Pol could have been a thing. And so why not make it all three of them? It's pretty rare, but I have seen, if not just Archer and Trip, then like Archer, Trip, and T'Pol.
I can kind of see the appeal, but also I think
I don't think there was enough there to support it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Not in the way I would argue like McSpurk, right?
Yeah.
I would say, in the original series we've got like 3 seasons and a couple of movies, but like that's way more content to work off of than what you had with the 3 of them in 4 seasons.
That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's true. T'Pol and Trip were very expanded upon, but yeah, I don't think the relationship between Trip and Archer was kind of touched, but not really. They are good friends. They were good friends even before they
Right.
went on the ship, but you didn't get a lot of it. Like, they didn't interact as much,
Well, they didn't seem like best friends.
Which is weird because they were supposed to be.
I know. And I think
Yeah.
maybe that's why Trip Archer is not as popular as Archer Shran.
Exactly.
Archer with anybody is just kind of like, what? he's got Porthos. Like, what does he need? Like, what's the need for romance?
I think a lot of people like him Shran, but yeah, I can see
they
that.
They do. A lot of people do, but still, I'm saying, if you went from a canon perspective, like, it's just Archer and Porthos. That's it. That's it. That's the pairing.
There was this woman he dated in, like, season 4. It was kind of weird. Yeah.
It was very out of place.
Yeah.
But season 4, I mean,
it was better than seasons 1 and 2.
Okay. We've talked about a lot of pairings.
Yeah, we did.
Through the 4 shows. Soda, what is your favorite of all the ones we talked about?
In canon or in fanon?
It can be either.
Well, let's see. In the Next Generation, I kind of like the throuple of Troy and Riker and Worf. I think it's an interesting dynamic. I like them for the same reason I like McSpurk. I think they work well together.
Okay, so you see that as like a balanced throuple. That's cool.
Yeah. In Deep Space, it's weird, in Deep Space Nine there isn't a throuple that I can think of. I can think of one for Voyager, and we discussed one for Enterprise, but I can't think of one for Deep Space Nine. I do like Quark and Odo. They're funny. Aside from that, Jadzia and Worf were a great couple. That's it, basically. Like, Garrick and Bashir they're there. I can't deny that there is something there, but I'm not going to look up content.
But it's not interesting to you. As interesting as others. Okay. Cool.
In Voyager, I like B'Elanna and Seven. I think they have an interesting dynamic together. And, well, in Enterprise, Trip and T'Pol, because there's I don't know if there's anything more meatier than that. What about you?
Well, if I'm being honest, none of the heterosexual couples interested me out of any of the shows, and it's not for lack of content or the fact that maybe they worked as a couple. It's just too to me.
I get it.
Sometimes I'm really turned off by like formula type romances, especially if it's in your face. If I was to ship anybody with anybody, be Picard and Crusher, just because, like, coulda, woulda, what if?
Yeah.
And I find that I really enjoyed seeing Picard be awkward. Because it would, like, take him down a notch. Do you know what I mean? When he's faced with his feelings. So I never really minded Picard Crusher like moments. I didn't ever expect anything of it, but I was like, this is entertaining. Look at him squirm.
Yeah. I get it.
I do like Quark and Odo. I think that's just funny. But again, because and I think the way you phrased it explains it best, they're still enemies even when they're friends, and even if they could be lovers. It doesn't change. It doesn't make them like sweeter to each other or anything. It's like the way they work together is just entertaining. It's unique.
Yeah, I mean, you could see them be together and Odo still throw Quark in jail for breaking some law.
Exactly. For instance, if they were married or something, you'd be like, you just threw your husband in jail, so he deserved it.
Yeah, he deserved it.
And so I find that entertaining. To me, that's just more interesting. So I'm cool with that. That's really kind of it, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, as many ships as we talked about, not that many caught my attention and made me really interested in it, or even go look up content for it. I was just kind of like, okay. But we could just say that's because my heart lies with the original series, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I did like Worf and Dax. I felt kind of bad for him when she died, but
But then how he handled it with Ezri was just
it was weird. But I chalked that up to the bad writing.
Probably the best. It's for the best.
Because he's no stranger to having lost somebody. And I was like, he could handle it. But also, like, what is he doing with new Dax? Like, but again, that whole thing was just, what are they even doing with her character? It makes no sense. I mean, she's awesome. Like, she could be an awesome character, and yet you're tying her up with all these relationships like she doesn't need. That's how I felt about it. I had no idea what was going on with Worf and Troy. I'm going to be upfront. Did not expect it. I remember I had jumped ahead to watch an episode, and suddenly it was like Worf and Deanna, and I went, when did that happen? And then I tried to figure out when it happened and couldn't pinpoint it.
Some place between season 6 and 7, I guess.
Yeah, it's like it just showed up unannounced.
Yeah.
I didn't want you to visit today. What are you doing on my screen?
Exactly.
So I was just kind of like, I'm not sure what's going on here, but okay. I loved it anytime, even though Deanna's mom was like harassing Picard, I was still entertained every time she came on screen.
Yeah.
And then in Deep Space Nine too, so it was.
She's just a great character.
Yeah.
I just really like her.
Talking about like great side characters or returning characters, she's definitely one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like I didn't like B'Elanna and Tom, but it was vanilla to me.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
In the sense that it was very a formula kind of thing. And then, like you said, they just kind of let it fade.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think that wraps it up for our discussion of pairings within Trek series, the Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise. At some point, Soda, you and I will be able to come and talk about Discovery and maybe Picard, some of the new shows that are out there. We have talked a little bit about pairings in our reviews of Lower Decks.
That's true.
I'd say those are still in development, I'd say. So I'd love to watch
a developing situation.
Yeah, in a developing situation. And I'd love to see like what comes of season 3.
Yeah, me too.
For Lower Decks as far as pairings.
Yeah, so I think that's it for today.
We'll be back with another episode. But had an interesting discussion, and thank you everybody for listening.
Yeah, thank you.